Before diving into any investment, we've got to look way beyond the top-line numbers. We need to really understand the regulatory framework a company operates in and the exact corporate entities connected to it. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're basically acting as an investor's X-ray machine. We are taking an objective, documentary-style look right at the draft red herring prospectus, or DRHP, of Indo-MIM Limited. We're going to analyze their complex global corporate structure, their subsidiaries, and that absolutely critical regulatory footprint. And just a quick reminder up front, this explainer is strictly for educational purposes. It's based entirely on the provided DRHP, so there's no speculation here, and it is definitely not a buy or sell recommendation. All right, let's jump right in.
Here's our roadmap for the investor's X-ray. First, we're going to unpack why regulatory approvals matter so much. Then, we'll look at the company's corporate blueprint, break down its global subsidiaries, and finally, read the fine print on its material licenses.
Section 1. The Foundation. Why approvals matter.
So Indo-MIM is a leading global supplier of precision components. They use highly specialized tech like metal injection molding, or MIM, and investment casting. And here's the kicker. Their facilities in India and the US serve some incredibly regulated sectors. We're talking defense, aerospace, and medical devices. Because they are literally supplying critical parts that impact human health and national security, their operating licenses, environmental clearances, and defense permits, they aren't just a stack of paperwork. They are the absolute lifeblood of this business. If a license drops, production stops. It's that simple.
Section 2. The Blueprint. Corporate Evolution.
Now, Indo-MIM didn't just pop up overnight as a global powerhouse. Take a look at this timeline. The company was actually incorporated way back in 1996 in Hyderabad. Fast forward, and their global footprint really starts to explode. In 2016, they formed Indo-MIM Inc. over in the US. By 2020, they acquired Triax Industries to tap deeper into the aerospace sector. Then, in 2023, they snapped up CMG Technologies in the UK. And most recently, and this is a really important piece for us today, in January 2024, they completed their conversion into a public limited company. So they've set a very fresh stage for this IPO. And who's driving all this strategic direction? Well, the DRHP clearly identifies a specific group of promoters. The corporate promoter is Green Meadows Investments Limited. Alongside them are the individual promoters, Christian Shivakula Jr., Raj Shivakula, and Jagadamba Chandrasekhara. Figuring out exactly who holds the reins is a massive part of any solid due diligence.
Section 3. The Branches. Global Subsidiaries Breakdown.
Let's look at how Indo-MIM is actually structured globally. It's kind of fascinating. The DRHP lists 4 direct, 100% owned subsidiaries. There's Indo-MIM Inc. in Texas, Triax Industries in Arizona, Conway Marsh Garrett Technologies, or CMG, in the UK, and Phoenix Ventures II in California. But check out the structural quirk at the bottom of this network. Indo-MIM Mexico is an indirect subsidiary. Indo-MIM Inc. only holds a 49% share in it. However, the DRHP notes that because the U.S. subsidiary exercises significant control and bears substantially all the risk, it is still accounted for as a subsidiary on a consolidated basis.
Now, here is where we really have to read the fine print. The DRHP explicitly flags a potential conflict of interest regarding these exact entities. It literally states, quote, all of our subsidiaries are involved in the same line of business as that of our company and are involved in activities similar to that of the business of our company, end quote. So for an investor, what does that mean? It means there's an inherent intercompany risk here because the parent and the subsidiaries are effectively chasing the exact same operational pursuits and often sharing common directors.
And while we're mapping out the corporate family tree, I've got to point out a pretty important disclosure gap. In the provided DRHP excerpts we're reviewing, the text actually cuts off right at the heading, Our Group Companies. Remember our rule? We only use what's in the document. So we have to acknowledge this missing context. Detailed information on other associated group companies outside of those core subsidiaries is simply omitted from the available excerpts.
Section 4. The Fine Print, Material Approvals, and Missing Licenses.
All right, let's separate what they actually have from what they're missing, starting with the active approvals. Over in India, they maintain their vital environmental clearances from the MOE FCC, plus your standard factory and labor registrations. But looking stateside, that is where the regulatory dependencies get incredibly specialized. In the U.S., Indo-MIM Inc. is registered with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. But even more critically, they hold federal firearm licenses from the U.S. Department of Justice, specifically to manufacture and import firearms other than destructive devices. They also hold export licenses from the U.S. Department of Commerce for unclassified defense articles. Guys, considering how heavily the parent company relies on this specific U.S. subsidiary, keeping these federal nods active is absolutely crucial.
Flipping over to intellectual property, the Indian parent company has 4 registered trademarks. This includes their corporate logo and the mark Indo-MIM, which cover all classes under the Trademark Act. They've also got 2 pending applications for Indo-Fusion and Indosphere. But here is a really interesting detail. Despite its massive material importance to the overall business, the DRHP notes that the U.S. subsidiary Indo-MIM Inc. doesn't hold any registered intellectual property of its own.
This whole regulatory tightrope becomes really obvious when we look at their pending applications. Sure, the primary manufacturing and export licenses are active, but several key approvals are currently stuck in a holding pattern. The big ones? They've got applications pending right now with the CDSCO, the Central Drug Standard Control Organization, for licenses to import and manufacture Class C medical devices. They are also waiting on Phase 2 factory licenses and pollution consents for their Gauribitter Noor setup. So if you are banking on their growth in the medical sector, those pending CDSCO approvals are absolutely the main hurdle to watch.
Now, the DRHP also requires companies to disclose approvals that are mandatory but haven't even been applied for or obtained yet. Indo-MIM discloses one very specific missing item here. They do not have the building stability certification for their warehouse located at A66 in the KIADB area in Chokhali. Now, you might be thinking, well, that sounds pretty minor compared to federal defense licenses, and sure, it might be, but it is still a statutory requirement that remains unfulfilled.
Section 5. Key Investor Takeaways. So, after scanning that corporate timeline, mapping out the global subsidiaries, and digging through all those environmental and defense licenses, what is the bottom line you need to remember as an IPO investor?
Here are your factual takeaways pulled straight from the DRHP. First off, the company just completed a complex transition to a public limited entity in January 2024. Second, there's a massive reliance on their U.S. subsidiaries, which means they require strict, ongoing compliance with specialized federal defense and firearm regulations. Third, we found that built-in intercompany risk. Remember, the subsidiaries operate in the exact same business lines as the parent. Fourth, any big push into medical sector growth is hinging directly on those pending CDSCO approvals. And finally, they faced your standard heavy industry operational risks, like managing environmental renewals alongside minor missing certifications, like that warehouse stability certificate.
We've now mapped the corporate structure and that high-stakes regulatory framework Indo-MIM operates under. So, the ultimate question for you as an investor is this: do the global manufacturing rewards and the international footprint outweigh those complex cross-border compliance risks? Next time, we're going to move from the company itself right into the IPO, understanding exactly how the offer is structured, who can participate, and how allocation actually works. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will see you in the next one.